Okay, so we'll get started. I'll start with a small introduction of Authentica, and then we will dive into the topic. Thank you all for making time. I know this is a very busy season. Some of you are probably about to send your students abroad or already have your students abroad. So understand that this is a commitment for you. Thank you. For those of you who don't know about Authentica, I want to kind of share a quick introduction. So you're familiar with us and why we exist and what we do. It'll actually make a lot more sense as we dive into the webinar with Dr. Leonardo Plastila and Lorenzo. So, brief history. So we were sort of incubated, I would say, in India. So a lot of Gandhian philosophy influenced our establishment, and Gandhi believed that learning happens best with the head, hands, and the heart. So our holistic pedagogy engages the student on the physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual dimension, so that we can have a transformative experience for the students. And these are some of the institutions that we have the honor of supporting, both in North America as well as in Australia. Over the last 12 years, we've delivered about 30 plus programs for 5,000 students in many parts of the world. These are some of the regions that we do our short-term faculty-led programs. You can see that the big pocket is in the Central and South and East Asia, and a big pocket in Central and Western Europe. So that's most of our, I guess, regional focus. Overall, we focus on a few types of programs: faculty-led programs, project-based learning, internships, as well as newly launched study abroad, semester study abroad and summer programs in Florence and Barcelona. Now, many of you must be asking, actually, in fact, have already asked us, if you're launching a program, new program on sustainability, why does it have to be Florence and Barcelona, which is very saturated? And our hypothesis is that precisely for that reason, right? If you want to have the largest impact on sustainability metrics, we want to kind of go where students want to go in huge numbers and make a difference there by creating a type of program that does study abroad differently. So now the argument for study abroad and sustainability is, can they coexist? Many of us know that studying abroad involves hopping on a flight, and the numbers basically are student who studies abroad for a semester spends about 4 to 6 metric tons studying abroad. So, and that's basically for an American, that's 25 to 37% of the average carbon footprint. And these are all, the sources are cited here. And for those of you, who registered, you'll have this recording, so you can look these numbers up. And as you can see, US is one of the highest per capita, of carbon footprints here. But it's not all doom and gloom for study abroad, because there are many benefits to study abroad. So what the evidence basically tells us is that 86% of students who study abroad are reporting an increased environmental awareness. And it's not just awareness, 73% of them actually implement behavior changes, whether that's as a consumer, as a student, or as a professional. And each student who studies abroad influences 4.2 other students, which is really interesting, because it's not just that student that we get to influence, but also four other students upon their return. And many students who study abroad end up working in sustainability focused roles. And it's actually demonstrated that 31% of the people who studied or in environmental policy leadership roles actually studied abroad when they were in college. So which is interesting, because it definitely has shaped their worldview. So if you put all of these numbers together, what it means is that although it costs 5 metric tons for a student to study abroad, over time, the benefits of study abroad far outweigh. So we're basically saving the student from spending 51 metric tons through the impact that we are having. So that's, if we multiply by the number of students who are actually going to be studying abroad in Florence and Barcelona, you can imagine, if you want to move the needle, we actually want to go where the students really want to go in huge numbers. And that sort of is the reason why we launched study abroad in Barcelona and Florence. And just to kind of illustrate this point further, right? So if you do a traditional study abroad program, it takes 3 to 5 years for the break even for carbon footprint. So on average, 4 years. if you make it sustainability optimized, it can bring it down to 2 years. But if we actually design with a lot of intentionality, we can actually bring this carbon footprint return on investment down to 6 to 12 months. So that's really what we're going after. You can see that actually it's a 5, 6 times increase in the return on investment. And with that context set, I'd like to kind of dive into how we can do that in the context of the Mediterranean. So welcome, Leonardo and Lorenzo. Thank you so much for joining us today. Leonardo holds a PhD in Italian literature from the University College in Dublin and has taught Italian language, literature, and culture studies across numerous institutions and brings extremely valuable expertise in intercultural education. So thank you, Leonardo, for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Ravi.
And also joining us is Lorenzo Ciccarelli, Authentica's country director for Italy, who oversees our programming in Florence and has been instrumental in developing sustainability-focused academic offerings. We're also joined by Gina Mahfoud, who's our VP of Institutional Relationships and Student Experience. So let's dive into the topic of today. So I'll start with Leonardo. Leonardo, Florence has been a traditional destination for American study abroad for decades, right? So, and you've been involved in that for a couple of them at least. So, from your perspective as an educator, how and why should study abroad in Florence evolve beyond conventional art history and language focus? And why is this evolution necessary now?
Well, I think that obviously Florida is a very popular destination, as you said, and it's saturated. And but I think I've been working in this field for 30 years almost, so and I work with many programs. I think that in some cases, some programs have become lazy in essentially giving always the same type of curriculum to the students and not really engaging the student in truly experience everything that Florence has to offer, which is a lot. So yes, it's a good question. Why should people come to Florence, given that there are already quite a number of people? Because I think there are parts of the Florence and the territory around Florence that are not being explored. And they're very much in line with what you said before about sustainability and sustainable practices in many fields, which go beyond arts and culture, language, and cover maybe fields like food studies, wine, sustainable practices, urban studies, all things that one can experience in this city, also because the city itself and its administration have heavily invested in sustainability in the recent years. And this is exactly what I try to do in some of the courses I teach, which is something that, generally speaking, most students like to study, to know, and to be exposed to. So I think Florence could be, coming to Florence could give a new perspective on this city, which is very rich, of course, and can essentially update the experience of the study abroad experience for many of the students. That's what I think.
No, absolutely. No, I think we're very much aligned in that thinking that just because we've done it like this forever doesn't mean that we have to continue doing like that, especially when today we have not just greater opportunity, but also students are demanding it. So students want to have a more meaningful and more immersive and impactful experience. So I think this is good timing. Lorenzo, I'll turn to you. Building on what Leonardo shared, you have been in Florence being a country director for close to 25 years now. What shifts have you been seeing in program requests from American universities? And what additional changes do you believe would create more meaningful experiences for both the students as well as the host community?
Yeah. So study abroad, luckily, has never stayed the same and will never be, I think. When I first started my study abroad path, already more than 20 years ago, the shift was from the classical humanities and fine art offering to business, political science, fashion and design, and different forms of food art. There was also an increasing interest in short-term programs, as well as the first request for internship placements. And this was beginning of 2000. There was a desire to deepen the cultural immersion with the community, so also the housing offering started to include homestay experiences. Then we come to the last 10 years, where experiential learning has increased the demand. So we have seen a shift towards interdisciplinary and experiential learning with an emphasis probably on sustainability, migration, and globalization, definitely. Then we arrived to 2020, the terrible 2020. There was another shift, leading to some hybrid programs and virtual exchange, with a great focus on health, safety, and mental well-being. And then finally, recent years, finally, the programs began integrating sustainable development goals more efficiently into their curricula. Today, we have a growth of more transdisciplinary approaches, blending art, science, and technology. And students are opting today for flexible degrees that mix areas like technologies, business, health and data science, etc. Furthermore, values like inclusions and equity are today the component in program design. We keep working on this element, adding even greater emphasis on sustainability and responsible travel, seeking also diverse student participation. There is a high demand on collaborating and interact with local communities, and also keep this in mind, local communities need and want this interaction. So
Great, Lorenzo, thank you for sharing that. So given these shifts, Leonardo, what do you see as the greatest missed opportunities in traditional study abroad programs in Florence?
Well, in one of the courses I teach, I make the clear distinction between Firenze and Florence. When I come to this point, students, the minds of my students blow because they never realized that. I comes to a point where I tell them, you're not in Florence, you are in Firenze. And a lot of programs still want the students to come to Florence, whereas in my courses, my view is that a student should come to Firenze, which is a completely different experience. So the missed opportunity is essentially related to the fact that your program is called Authentica. And again, in one of the classes, I talk a lot about stage authenticity. So there are two ways to deal with study abroad. One is to promote stage authenticity, which is a fake version of the experience abroad, and essentially keeping the students in Florence, if you know what I mean, as opposed to expose them to the authenticity of Firenze, which is a completely different story. And this comes, first of all, for a change of attitude and mindset. We are here today to talk about sustainability, for example, but for me, sustainability is not just about sustainable practices. It's that, of course, but it's also a mindset. It's an attitude. It's about the quality of life and quality of the experience, which is not only the quality of life of the resident, of course, but also the quality of life of those who come here, the students or the tourists alike. And to implement that should be the first priority that any program should have, so that anyone can benefit from this. For example, Florence, as I'm sure you all know, is a World Heritage Site. It's part of the UNESCO. The UNESCO has a World Heritage and Sustainable Program, which strongly emphasize the pros and cons of tourism, for example, or experience such as study abroad. And it really depends on how one deals with them. So if dealt properly, tourism or study abroad can be extremely beneficial for the people who come here, but also the people who live here. This is not necessarily happening right now in most cases. And therefore, I think what could make a difference would be to actually invest a lot in sending the message that people, students in our case, are coming to Firenze and not to Florence to live an authentic experience, not a staged authentic experience. And that's absolutely, there's a huge difference in that. And when my students realize that, they go home extremely happy to have realized that they have spent time in Firenze and they were able to actually experience the authenticity of the place. That's, I think, what needs to be done. And that's why, for example, as Lorenzo mentioned, after terrible 2020, we should be doing, because obviously a lot of things have changed since then. Therefore, I think it's important to send the message that Firenze is a city to be experienced as opposed to a city to be consumed. And that makes a huge difference, in my opinion.
That's actually echoes what we heard from students as well, Leonardo. I was in Florence last month and spoke to a few study abroad students who are finishing their spring semester. And we basically asked them, hey, we're launching this program in Florence. What do you, based on your semester here, what do you think, you would like to see in a new program? And they basically said, we'd like to really have more authentic experiences where we get to interact with the local communities a lot more. So effectively, because of the size of a lot of the programs, what happens is that it's easy to stay in a bubble with your own cohort or people from, your clique and not really experience the Firenze, right? So you kind of end up, traveling in that bubble from the US to Florence and going back without really kind of experiencing. And when you don't experience, we lose the opportunity for transformation. So thanks for sharing that perspective, Leonardo. Coming to the context of sustainability, right? I mean, the any place that becomes as popular as Florence attracts its own, flip side of the coin or the dark side of the coin. So that creates a lot of pressure over tourism, waste management, etc. In one of the most, I would say, culturally fragile and important parts of Italy. So, Leonardo, again, why should students be exploring sustainability related topics when studying abroad in Italy and particularly Florence right now?
Well, because as I was saying before, Italy as a whole and Florence too, the Florence territory. I mean, obviously, when I say Florence, I clearly refer to the territory, not just the small city center where most people tend to gravitate. Because the truth is that Italy, since the 1990s, actually has very much embraced sustainability as a practice in many fields. I happen, for example, to teach a course on wine as well, and in the late 1990s, in the wine sector, the word sustainability was very popular, and a lot of winemakers invested a lot on that. But also because Italy is very much working towards become a sustainable a country and do a lot, and Florence too, the Florence territory. Florence does a lot regarding this, which is why, for example, again, in the course I teach, I send my students outside the city center for some projects to actually study what happens over there, which is still part of Florence, to study the many aspects that they find in those neighborhoods in relation to sustainable practices, for example. So I think it's important because it's still very much an unexplored territory. So, and I think people should know about these things about Italy, because Italy is very active in this regards, in many sectors, in many fields. I mean, the whole in Florence, for example, the whole building of the tram and all the infrastructure is very much created in line with those ideas of sustainability. And this is something can be studied, especially from an urbanistic point of view. So there is a lot to really to know and to actually find out, but also the whole point about the smart city paradigm, which is another aspect related to technology, as Lorenzo was saying before. So I think that would be one of the reasons for doing that, yes.
Right, and let's not forget that Italy was one of the pioneers of the slow food movement, so which is very much related to sustainable food systems and cultural preservation as well, because food is a big part of tradition and culture. So
And if I can add something, sorry, Ravi. Not only do we have slow food, but we have a similar movement, which is Città Slow City, which was created here in Tuscany, in Greve and Chianti, based on the same idea that slow food had. So basically applying the principles of slow food to cities. And Città Slow is a great organization that I usually talk about, which shows, how you just said, how Italy anticipated many of those issues a long time ago. So Città Slow is now an international movement. So it's
right.
very
And the Winter Olympics is happening in Milan in February, and Milan is doing a lot to make this the most sustainable Winter Olympics ever by creating as little disruption to local infrastructure, and also kind of doing a lot to enhance the impact of the Olympics, after the Olympics leave the city. So yeah, definitely, I think there's lots of avenues and opportunities for us to explore sustainability in the context of in Italy and in Florence as well. So those of you who have an interest in this and have specific questions, please feel free to raise your hands or drop your questions in the chat. I will continue to drive the discussion, but it'll be more useful for you if your questions are answered. So if you think you have something that's not going to be or not being addressed, so please feel free to chip in. Yeah. Meantime, we'll keep going. Leonardo, one more question for you on that topic is, we understand that Italy is at the forefront of a lot of movements that aim towards living more sustainably. Can you speak specifically about Florence in terms of urban planning or food systems or cultural preservation that may not be, like you said, immediately obvious to traditional study abroad programs or program directors who don't have the visibility into what's happening behind the scenes in Florence?
well. Cultural preservation is a must in Italy, not only in Florence, everywhere in Italy. So the country is founded on cultural preservation, which is a very important aspect to realize. So maybe one of many people realize is that while Italy might come across as a very traditional country with a lot of cultural preservation, we also are a country with great innovation. The difference between Italy and a lot of other countries, in my opinion, is how we bring this tradition into the future. So innovation doesn't necessarily mean to destroy the tradition, but actually bring the tradition into the future. And we see that in a lot of fields, like the food, but also the urban studies and so on. So specifically in relation to the urbanization of the city, Florence is going through a major urban transformation with, for example, the creation and the expansion of the tram line, which is started a few years ago. Now they're building a couple of new lines with the goal of obviously discouraging people to take the car and to take the tram and to connect the whole city, so including the further neighborhoods, implementing this system, which apparently has been very popular, with the goal, of course, to transform Florence into a sustainable place. But also, a lot can be said about the smart mobility, the use of car sharing, bike sharing, the bikes that you can get, which are available and you can access anywhere in the city and use to travel the city. So smart mobility is one of the other things that this city has implemented. In fact, there is an important a smart city plan that anyone can access. It's online. It's part of what Florence has been creating, which gives you very detailed information about all the things that the city has already done and is planning to do for the future to really transform Florence into a smart and sustainable city. But then there are a lot of things that happened in some of the neighbors. For example, the use of solar panels in Novoli for the energy, a lot of things like sustainable housing. So there is really, it's a very long list, and I don't want to bore you with this, but I can tell you there is a lot going on right now in that regards. And this is something that, unfortunately, I have to say, not even the locals know about this, because there is one issue with the administration of Florence that doesn't do a great job in communicating this very well to its own people. And I think they should change that so that a larger number of people knows about these things. So the truth is that Florence has been going through a major transformation in the last 10, 15 years, and will continue to do so in the next 10 years. A transformation that is motivated by the desire to totally embrace sustainability and smart technology.
That's great. I think it's a perfect time, Lorenzo, because you've been developing courses for Authentica, like the slow food movement, sustainable urban planning, and circular economy in Italy, courses like that. It comes at a very good time, which is aligned with how the city itself is transforming itself. So it becomes a great learning opportunity for the students to align the courses with these shifts. So can you talk a little bit more about why these specific courses make sense in Florence, and how do these courses connect to Florence's unique context?
To Florence, yeah. So I believe that our courses make perfect sense in Florence due to the city's rich cultural, historical, and contemporary context, which aligns naturally with the themes of sustainability, heritage, and innovation. For example, the Slow Food Movement course. Tuscany and Florence, or Firenze as we like to say, in particular, is globally recognized for its culinary traditions, emphasis on local ingredients and artisanal food culture. The region is also the birthplace of the slow food philosophy, which originated in Italy as a response to the opening of the first McDonald's in Italy, and it was actually, I think, in Rome in 1985-86. Florence provides direct access to local markets, organic farms, vineyards, and food cooperatives where students can experience firsthand the principle of slow food, good, clean, and fair food. Food in Florence is deeply into identity, community, and sustainability, offering a national laboratory for experiencing everything what you can touch in traditional practices, globalization, industrial food. You can really touch and remove it or change it, better change it. Another course we have, the Sustainable Urban Planning course. Florence is a city, as we know, where Renaissance ideals of urban harmony, walkability, and civic design still influences the cityscape. This historical continuity provides a unique contrast to modern sustainability challenges. The city pedestrian-friendly layout, the almost efficient public transport, and adaptive reuse of heritage buildings make it a strong case study for sustainable planning in an historical urban setting. Florence is also engaging with smart city initiatives, as Leonardo was saying, and environmental policies such as green mobility and preservation of cultural heritage, fostering climate adaptation to strategies. So Florence is today taken as well as an example over the world for combining mobility, urban, and cultural preservation in environment. Another course we have is the Circular Economy in Italy course. And in fact, the Italian culture, especially in artisanal and manufacturing sectors, has long practiced forms of reuse, repair, and resourcefulness that is central to the circular economy. The city of Florence is a hub for fashion, design, and craftsmanship. industries increasingly adopting circular models through upcycling, ethical production, and sustainable supply chains. Italy also is one of the leading countries in the EU for circular economy initiatives, and Florence is home to several startup research institutions and cultural projects dedicated to sustainable innovations. In conclusion, Florence is not just a beautiful stage for these themes, it is a living example where tradition and innovation intersects. The city offers students tangible, immersive experiences that connect global sustainable development goals with local realities, making it an ideal educational environment, I think, for the courses we offer.
Right. I think thanks, Lorenzo, because I think that builds very nicely into the question that David and Sierra are asking. I'll take David's question first. David has asked us, how important do you think it is for students to engage with local academics who specialize in these issues, as opposed to local business people or even government agents? So basically, academics versus practitioners, I guess, right? So, because I guess David is looking for guidance on whether he should prioritize time with local professors or people from the industry. So, Leonardo, do you have a point of view on that?
Yes, I think this may be more a question for Lorenzo, but from my point of view, I can tell you that I think both can be done. I think I would certainly put a lot of emphasis on working even with producers, with business people, not just with the local academics. I mean, if you really want to get a complete experience, I think it's important to engage students with actual local, producer business, which is something that, for example, I do in the food course I teach, where I actually bring students to producers people so they can get an actual idea and interact with people who do this on a daily basis. So I think it's the academic aspect is important, of course, and the local, the knowledge of professors is important, but is not sufficient. I think it's important to work together with the people involved in those many businesses and industries. That's my view.
Yeah, completely. I'm agreeing. We need to work all together, and students as well. They give something to Florence. They give something, say, to the artisan, but the artisans are at the same time so happy to share the knowledge, to share their vision about now sustainability, but what they do. And this is the cradle of learning and giving something back. So students give something to Florence, and Florence gives something back to the students. And it's important that local academics, but also local universities and artisans, but mainly everything needs to cooperate together all the time.
Yeah, thanks, Lorenzo. David, I would encourage you to kind of find ways to incorporate both. In fact, I'm going to just share the couple of links in the chat. The standard programs, the summer and semester programs have two of these courses, Innovation in Action, which is a project-based learning course where you have both the academics involved, local academics who have expertise, and these projects are actually sponsored by practitioners. So we have the entrepreneurs coming and sharing they're sharing the project with the students, and the students work on it over the term, and they get to present it to the host organizations and get feedback. So that integrates both academia and practitioners. The other thing I want to share is also that we are doing a professional development program for faculty and staff who are looking to do more in Italy. This is going to be right after the EAIE conference. We'll share details with all the registered attendees here. That's going to be from September 13th to 19th, which will explore these topics on the ground. So hopefully that's something that you'll be able to take advantage of. I also want to take Sierra's question, which is again related. So, do students have the opportunity to conduct research as part of their sustainability coursework during the program? And I'll extend that question. What could that look like? Leonardo, maybe you want to take that.
Yes, definitely. Research should be is part of this, and certainly, I mean, we try. I mean, Lorenzo mentioned before the experiential learning aspect. This is key to this new dimension of the study abroad programs. So, experiential learning means exactly to, for example, to conduct research while studying, maybe even have do some kind of internship in some of the places, and again bring everything together. So absolutely, to answer Sierra's question, I would say yes, research can be done, should be done, and should be part of the whole program, because that would actually give meaning, real meaning to the whole experience.
And if I just can add something very simple, I think it's important as well. The student, even if they don't have the task to do some research, they need to find a challenge and start doing it on their own, trying to compare how things are done in one country rather than in another one. So it is true, we need the academics to push in one direction, but we also hope and want, and our goal is actually to have students that start already with a research spirit and looking for many things on their own. And this is what we hope for Authentica students in general.
Thank you. So I think hopefully that answers your question, Sierra. So a quick question. I mean, like, it's great that we want to create these courses and offer these courses. Just curious, Leonardo, how do you think students are going to respond to these themes compared to what they're currently used to seeing?
Well, my prediction is that I got to respond extremely well. I mean, in some of the courses I already teach, it's something I've already seen, there is a great demand and great interest for all of this. The only difference now in most programs, these things are only introduced and presented and only given small emphasis. I would actually think that if a whole program would actually be focused on these themes, I think students would absolutely love it. Because my experience is in the last few years telling me that the majority of the students are very much engaged in these topics. They truly care about these topics. They're also extremely concerned about those topics in the future, because we're talking about their future, of course. And so therefore, I definitely think that this would be something that most students would absolutely love to be exposed to and to investigate, to study, and to research. I'm very positive about this.
And that's consistent with a lot of data coming out in terms of millennials and Gen Zs wanting to kind of have more purpose, in both academic and professional endeavors. So this is consistent. So which is again good timing. So Lorenzo, what advice would you give to study abroad staff and faculty at universities who want to potentially refresh? They already have something in Florence, but they want to refresh offerings with sustainability components, but maybe are not fully sure of where to begin or how to begin. What advice would you give for them? Lorenzo? Yeah.
I hope to be able to give you the right advice. So again, I think you should always start with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as a framework. These 17 goals offer a clear global language around sustainability that covers everything from climate action to gender equality and responsible tourism. Use them as both a guide and conversation to start with your partners and mainly with the students. We don't need to invent new contents, just reframe existing courses, activities, and partnerships through sustainable lens. We don't need to separate sustainability course. Instead, we need to add sustainability to everything. Make a case study on art history, fashion, design, politics, psychology, but always add a sustainability particular touch. We need to include walking seminars that explore urban sustainability in Florence, as Leonardo does. We need to create reflections prompts that link courses to the SDG themes. Finally, I think we really need to talk to the students. They are the ones who want to engage with sustainability. And often they know much better than us how to apply best practices and how to drive to innovation. So Florence is actually the ideal city to explore the idea of a new renaissance in sustainability, integrating tradition with innovation. And Ravi, I think you can also give more advice after your experience being in Florence as well on how we can and what Authentica can do.
Oh, for sure. I think one thing is to kind of launch new programs. Another thing is to kind of take what you already have and incorporate, like you said, sustainability themes. So, Leonardo, if there's a faculty who wants to redesign their course while still maintaining, the context, what approaches would you recommend for faculty members?
Well, I think, just to refocus their courses and changing the objective, the course objective, the goals of the course, and adding to the content of that course the lens of sustainability. So to basically simply adapt the course, and this can be done with any course, by incorporating sustainable goals. Because as I said before, at the beginning, sustainability is about practices, but it's also about attitudes and mentalities. So even courses which maybe are more let's say conceptual and less can include sustainable aspects into it by focusing on the quality of life, health issues, and so on. Because sustainability should be seen as a larger concept, not only the idea of not consuming too much water or not just about climate change. So it's simply about reprogramming, so to speak, the courses by adding content or simply modify the already existing content and including focus on sustainable issues. And this can be done with any course, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so
like
embracing
David.
the idea of slowness, of slowing down and the quality, the reclaiming time and invest, focusing on the meaning of what we do, the things that we study, and all this. So it can be done in pretty much every course, I think.
Cool. And Sierra had a question that I just answered, so are we looking at expanding beyond, to Asia Pacific? So Sierra, yes, our next location for semester and summer programs will be in the Asia Pacific. We'll be happy to kind of talk to you more about which locations we are currently exploring for partnerships. In the meantime, on this today's topic, does anybody have any questions on the topics that we spoke about, or other topics that you'd like to hear about as we expand this webinar series? Because we really like to kind of contribute to a shift in how study abroad is done in parts of the world where lots of students want to go, and they choose to, for lack of alternatives, we're leaving a lot of impact, potential on the table. So would love some ideas and questions from the participants on the panel today to see if they have anything that they want to see happen from us. Theodore, Sydney, Emily, any questions, any ideas, any reflections on what we heard so far? Cool, Theodore, please go ahead. I believe you can unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'm Theodore Maleas. I'm head of student life and safety at the American College of Thessaloniki. I've enjoyed this presentation so far, and I actually see a lot of similarities between Thessaloniki and Florence, or on a lot of levels. And I really liked the. I'm really keeping a quote that I heard about experience the city and not consuming the city. So I have a question that came up. It's a technical question. So being a hub, a travel hub, we have a lot of study abroad students that come to Thessaloniki, but we're constantly battling with low-cost airlines, right? Because they come here and we try to get them to experience life as a local, but they're constantly bombarded with these chances to visit other places in Europe. So are there any tips or tricks to keep the students in your city?
I can take a first crack at it, Lorenzo. I would love to hear from you as well. So there is a huge movement called the Stay Local movement. So, and if you come to NAFSA, the sustainability I'm one of the co-chairs of the NAFSA Sustainability Special Interest Group, and we're basically kind of hosting a small session on the Stay Local movement, which is growing in popularity. Look, end of the day, if people want a burger, and if you bring them to an Asian restaurant, people are going to go out and get a burger. So I think positioning your program is a big part of what it is. Like, you want to attract the right kind of students for the right reasons. So if we kind of advertise, there's a burger place and you come inside and it's a Thai restaurant, the students are going to be, going out and getting a burger. So that's a very crass way of putting it. Point is that there are a lot of different motivations for students to study abroad. So if we want a certain type of behavior, during their breaks, and they have low-cost airlines available, it's going to be very hard if we don't attract the right kind of students with the right kind of promise. That's number one. Second thing is, what viable alternatives are we providing them locally as a substitute for them to jump on a plane and go out, that we can include in the program? For example, can we actually go out and do a day in the life of a farmer on a vineyard experience that doesn't necessarily kind of cost a lot of money, but it gives the students a very enriching and authentic experience that they can do on one of the days that they would have otherwise hopped on a flight to go to Rome or wherever in the world that Ryanair flies, right? So those are two things that we are looking to implement, having very intentional programming over the weekends to give students a reason to stay back. And second is to really strongly position this as impact focused program, so attracting the right kind of students to come and study abroad in these locations. So hopefully these two things move the needle, but also would love to hear from Lorenzo and Leonardo on what are your thoughts on this, and what have you seen being more effective?
Yeah, so there are several factors here, I think, that come into play. First of all, as Ravi said, we need the right students to do the program. If they come for 3 months, 4 months, of course, and we would also encourage them to visit something different than Florence, because it's important as well. They compare. They've been to London, to Madrid, to Barcelona. They come back to Florence and finally say, I really feel Florence as my home. They would do the same in Saloniki, right? They travel and then they come back. Oh, so quiet, beautiful, good food. This is very important. However, they come sometimes once in a lifetime to study abroad, and they want to do everything. If you go in a nice restaurant, and now I'm talking about the Thai restaurant Ravi was saying before, of course, you are tempted to try everything. You don't stick only to one plate. You want to try everything. And that's exactly what happens. It depends then from us to give them alternatives, but not avoiding them to travel because it's completely the right and the knowledge, but to give them good alternatives in sustainability, possibly, around Florence, around Thessaloniki, around everywhere, to really immerse in something different. Because again, it's not the location that makes it different, it's the adventure, what they do, how they do it. I don't know if Leonardo wants to add something as well.
Well, I agree with everything you and Ravi have been saying. I just want to add something, but also a personal anecdote. When I first started this job many years ago, I was very idealistic. So I was teaching at the time a course, one of the courses that you have a lot in American university, humanities, covered the whole civilization from prehistory to present time. And I did design a course based on the fact that every single weekend students would actually stay in Italy but visit places in Italy from Sardinia to Calabria where they could actually learn about the specific civilization that developed in that part of Italy. So starting from prehistory, then the Etruscans, then the Romans, the Greeks, etc., all the way until the present. So that every weekend they would stay in Italy. Because, in my opinion, as both Ravi and Lorenzo said, it is a shame that people come to places like Florence or Saloniki or whatever, and they actually leave without truly knowing the place. That's so sad. I mean, it shouldn't be this way. Therefore, I totally agree with what has been said, and I think we should get the right student, but also maybe force it is the wrong term, but certainly implement it with great energy. Let's put it that way. the fact that they should stay here and be engaged over the weekend in doing some activities which might be related, of course, to the courses they teach or the sustainable activities to truly explore the city and the area around it. So to truly become familiar with that area. Because otherwise, what is the real point of studying abroad? I mean, it's just going abroad and travel the whole time. It shouldn't be this way, I think.
Thanks, Leonardo. I still see the idealist in you, and I applaud you for that. David, David, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess more of a comment to kind of continue the conversation. Connecting the experiences to the overall programmatic objectives, I think, is really the key, and in kind of demanding or forcing that the students engage in reflective practice, right? So I've similarly led a short-term or 4-week humanities kind of program in Athens, and we packed the itinerary through most of the weekends, hitting archaeological sites, but making sure we were spending nights. The local group we worked with told us we were staying in places where Greeks vacation, not where Germans vacation, right? So these were the more authentic experiences. So staying in Monovasia, staying in Nafpatkos. But the students are there, you give them one free weekend, and they're all going to fly down to Mykonos or Santorini. Theodora, I flew up to Thessaloniki and spent a lovely weekend there, had a friend drive in from Skopje. And so maybe direct students to go to Lake Ohri instead of to Mykonos and get a different kind of experience, right? But again, kind of connecting to reflecting, right? Kind of demanding that they reflect on the ways in which their participation in the program. Lorenzo, I think you mentioned connection to the sustainable goals tourism, right? And sort of study abroad's a kind of tourism. We don't want to call it that or think of it that way, but of course it is. And so having the students at the end of the program reflect on how their status as a tourist, whether it was for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 15 weeks, can be reconciled with their deep commitment to sustainability. How will it shape their practice? How does it change their understanding of these things? How have they developed from a real facile or surface level understanding and engage with it in a deeper way? a lot of this is recruitment, getting the right kinds of students, but then shaping the program so that it brings the best out of them. So again, for whatever that's worth, I just wanted to throw those kinds of remarks out there. Thank you.
David, thank you for sharing that, because that's coming from experience and you've seen this in action. I really like this idea of including immersive co-curricular experiences that doesn't feel like that feels actually kind of fun, going out and camping in interesting places and stuff. So students don't feel like they're missing out on something else that they could have been doing. And again, giving them a free weekend, is always a good idea. But along with that, shaping that what they could do with those free weekend by directing them in a few things, a few directions is useful. We are also looking at gamifying, giving points for certain types of behaviors students will actually do. So get the competitive juices flowing, so to incentivize the right kinds of behavior. Hopefully, Theodore, that helps, in terms of
Thank
things
you.
that you can-
Absolutely. Absolutely. It helps. And, the reflection, I really liked David's idea on actually having them do some reflective work on what we're doing. I've seen a trend. While programming used to get a lot of participation, I see a trend, and I don't know if this has to do with the new generation being a little bit more independent and trying to plan on their own, or if it's the general feeling that they have time, because we typically do longer programs, 3-4 month programs. So it's like, yeah, I'll check that out next time. I mean, our trips to the vineyards used to be packed from the first day we would open them, and now, we've just seen a little bit of a decrease in some of these interesting program activities that bring you closer to the local population. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again. In the interest of time, I would like to kind of bring this webinar to a close. I appreciate Leonardo and Lorenzo for sharing your thoughts today. I think it's very timely to share these perspectives and shape the future of study abroad in Italy and particularly in Florence. We invite you to stay connected for announcements on the next set of webinars in this series. We'll share that by email. And also the experts will be talking about them. Thanks all for your participation today, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Arrivederci.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.